All right, let's jump straight into this explainer. Today, we're going to objectively map out an incredibly complex, totally sprawling narrative from a fascinating piece of source material. It basically attempts to connect 80 years of history, modern technology, and ancient esoteric lore into one massive unified theory. It's a really intriguing look at exactly how modern conspiracy webs are constructed, linking everything from mid-century organized crime to the birth of Bitcoin, and even all the way back to ancient history. So whether you're already familiar with these claims or you're seeing them for the very first time, our goal today is to neutrally deconstruct the architecture of this entire argument. Because this source material leaps so rapidly across decades and massive industries, we're going to break it down into 6 distinct thematic pillars. 1. Origins of the crime syndicate. 2. Cryptography and early computing. 3. Digital currency and Bitcoin. 4. The Silicon Valley connections. 5. Global surveillance and blackmail. And finally, 6. The esoteric blockchain theory. Okay, Pillar 1. Origins of the crime syndicate, the foundation of the narrative. Let's get into it. According to the source, the foundation of this entire global web kicks off with mid-century mobsters like Meyer Lansky. The timeline maps out the assertion that Lansky and the mob secured their initial geopolitical power by controlling major ports during World War II, through what was known as Operation Underworld. And the narrative draws a direct line from that wartime port control right to the year 1948, claiming this logistical power is exactly how they ran weapons to help establish the State of Israel. Now, what's really fascinating here is the pattern the source sets up, a pattern of control that evolves over time. It contrasts old-school physical blackmail, like Lansky's alleged operations to compromise figures like FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover, with a major shift into systemic financial control. The text points directly to the Bank Secrecy Act, framing it not as a standard piece of regulation, but as an intentional mechanism to eliminate banking privacy for the everyday citizen. It's presented as this huge transition from individual coercion to mass financial surveillance. Moving right along to Pillar 2, cryptography and early computing, the technological shift. This is where the timeline gets highly specific and incredibly controversial. Step 1 acknowledges Alan Turing as the main cryptographer for the Allied forces, but Step 2 is where the conspiracy really takes hold, claiming Turing was actually assassinated because cryptography was deemed a classified weapon. The source then connects this to Steps 3 and 4, alleging that General Groves, the head of the Manhattan Project, shifted his focus during Operation Underworld to help develop the UNIVAC computer. The explicit claim here? That early computing wasn't just for, basic data processing. It was literally designed from the ground up to keep tabs on citizens. And this brilliantly illustrates the overarching theme the text is building towards. They define this merger between government, banking, and surveillance systems as the Octopus narrative. Specifically, it claims that a company called Insaw Inc. created software programs for the IRS that secretly served as a backdoor. According to this theory, the tentacles of this system were designed for one singular purpose: widespread blackmail of both everyday people and powerful government officials. All right, Pillar 3, digital currency and Bitcoin, the financial evolution. Okay, so this is where the financial succession gets absolutely wild. The author asserts that after Meyer Lansky died, his finances and vast connections didn't just vanish into thin air. They were taken over by a guy named Alvin Malnick. The narrative then makes a massive leap, claiming Malnick took that old mob money and invested it heavily into a man named David Chaum. Now, for those who don't know, David Chaum is widely recognized as the pioneering foundation for digital currency and digital voting. The source is actively trying to tether the very genesis of crypto directly back to organized crime. Building off of Chaum, the source constructs this super provocative chronological timeline. It claims that Chaum mentored a protege named Len Sassaman, who helped lay the foundation for the dark web. Then, the narrative makes a direct, completely unverified assertion that Sassaman was, in fact, Satoshi Nakamoto, the anonymous creator of Bitcoin. The author actually goes so far as to claim Sassaman was conveniently suicided after creating what they call a universal flow meter for entropy. It basically tries to tie the timestamp mechanics of cryptocurrency into this much grander scheme of controlling energy and matter. Which leads us right into Pillar 4, the Silicon Valley connections, the tech web. The text uses the career trajectory of tech executive Naveen Jain as the ultimate connective tissue here. They trace his early work at Burroughs Corporation, which they tie back to those early UNIVAC computers we talked about, straight through to his time working for Bill Gates. The source claims Jain advised Gates to acquire digital currency tech from David Chaum, and then states that Jain's creation of InfoSpace eventually led to the development of Google. The ultimate conclusion they're drawing? that Google, YouTube, and the NSA are fundamentally interconnected entities born from the exact same government computing lineage. Then, the narrative pulls in some massive contemporary controversies, explicitly linking Jeffrey Epstein to the so-called PayPal mafia via alleged investments in Peter Thiel. By making this connection, the author is attempting to bridge infamous financial and social scandals directly with modern government surveillance software, since, as you probably know, Thiel is a co-founder of the data analytics firm Palantir. And that sets the stage for Pillar 5, Global Surveillance and Blackmail, the modern panopticon. The text ominously frames Palantir not simply as a successful tech or defense contractor, but as the ultimate global surveillance tool. Using the phrase "one ring to rule them all," it paints this really dark picture of a consolidated worldwide tracking system that no citizen can evade, deeply rooted in the history of blackmail operations we discussed earlier. To really drive home this idea of continuous multi-generational espionage, the author draws a direct parallel. You've got Robert Maxwell, historically tied to the Promise software scandal, an early tool allegedly modified for spying, as well as influencing education through textbook publishing. Fast forward decades later, and his daughter's associate, Jeffrey Epstein, is framed as continuing this exact legacy by covertly funneling money to institutions like Harvard and MIT to influence modern digital currency initiatives. The message the author is sending is clear. The actors change, but the agenda of data and financial control remains exactly the same. Finally, we hit Pillar 6, the esoteric blockchain theory, the final convergence. Now, here is where the source completely redefines blockchain. Actually, scratch that, we're not even talking about decentralized ledgers or financial utility anymore. It describes blockchain as a metaphysical tool, a literal fusion of time, energy, and consciousness designed to entirely monitor and, quite literally, mine the human mind. Just to show you how intense and frankly fantastical the tone gets, the author claims the actual endgame of this evolution isn't just knowing what you buy or who you talk to. No, it is the literal surveillance of human dreams. They refer to this ultimate technology as a looking glass. In its closing arguments, the text weaves modern politics together with ancient lore to really cement its theory. It claims that Las Vegas being called Sin City is absolutely no coincidence, pointing out that the sixth son of the biblical figure Canaan was named Sin. It highlights casinos like the Venetian and Phoenician as direct nods to ancient Canaanite empires. Then it ties all of this to modern political donors like the Adelson family and claims the Israeli Knesset is prophesied to become the center of the world. It is a dizzying, massive attempt to prove that modern casino empires and global politics are actively fulfilling ancient esoteric prophecies. So we have mapped out the entire architecture of this claim. And look, whether you view this as a totally unverified collection of disparate events, or you find these historical through lines compelling, we are left with a really vital question. Why are sprawling, everything-is-connected narratives that fuse mob history, Silicon Valley tech, and ancient esoteric lore so immensely captivating in today's internet culture? What does the massive popularity of this kind of source material actually tell us about our collective anxieties regarding privacy, technology, and power? It's something that will definitely keep you thinking long after the screen goes dark.